whatever it is you feel, just observe, just be aware. And notice if you feel a peace or that joy or loving of spirit. You may even begin to see the inner light. It often appears as a golden white or purple light, or maybe that blue or pink. Just be aware of its presence. Nothing to do with it, just observe. Just observe and hold your attention. And now, just like you're aware of the feeling on the top of the head, or watching that inner light, now begin to listen as you hold your attention on that inner light. Begin to listen for any inner sounds. It is actually very common to hear like a high-pitched ringing in the ears. But if we listen more deeply, we may also hear other sounds, often sounds of nature or music. You may even hear that still small voice or gentle impressions that may seem like a thought, but it's an impression of that inner knowing as the soul begins to communicate and share with us so that we become more consciously aware of our divinity. And from this place, I'm going to just offer up a prayer. You're welcome to follow along. Just listen, or however you wish. Just maintain that inner focus. So, Lord God, just now, we just ask for your loving light and sound to come present for each and every one of us at this time of meditation, as we now come within to commune with you. We ask that your Holy Spirit meet us at this doorway, this spiritual eye, and that you begin to fill our souls, our bodies, our mind and emotions, all levels of our consciousness, that you fill us with your Holy Spirit, that we may be empowered and fulfilled as we look to you and offer up our loving, and as we bow down in loving and service, in gratitude and reception of your Holy Spirit, we receive and open our hearts, our minds, our souls on every level, that we may be filled with your Holy Spirit. And in this we may be lifted and guided ever towards you, ever towards that greater reunion. And we always ask for your help and assistance in helping us to understand, to help us fulfill why we are here, in this journey of the soul's life. And we ask that through your Holy Spirit, those karmas, those situations or circumstances, our thoughts and feelings, our reactions and actions, always be lifted and cleared through your loving light and sound, that we may step free of any karmic patterns, attachments of any kind, so that we may ever move into that greater fulfillment that comes through your loving and grace as we choose to forgive and to let go, as we choose our own soul's liberation, as we truly make you first in all we think and say and do, that our full beingness becomes more focused on you and you only. And we hold this time of meditation as a time of sacred communion by which we get to be in loving relationship with you as we move ever closer and ever into greater union. And Lord, as we hold ourselves out before you now, we share, we sing, we say, and chant that sacred name you've given us. That sacred name we received in initiation. That sacred name we received, your spoken name of the hue. That as we chant or sing this name silently within now, we empower ourselves. We share our loving and we receive your loving in fullness. Grateful for having this name as this way and path into your loving heart. And so now let's move into a time of silence as we focus upon this loving with God, chanting the sacred name, moving into that deeper communion with God and our own souls. So from this deep place within, just allowing that loving to continue stirring you awake and aware. And to go deeper as well as higher, there's also a process of letting go. So just now, just begin to let go, to forgive, to release all those things that come present in your mind or emotions, where you find yourself in struggle, in turmoil, in reaction, that you find yourself ever trying to resolve and seeking peace and freedom from whatever situations or circumstances or people that you find yourself in competition and entanglement with. Just allow these situations to move through you as you simply acknowledge them in loving and let them go. And just seeing them go up in God's loving light and sound, just turning it all over to God and literally seeing your loving and God's loving just move in and through all these areas that you're choosing to release at this time. So once again, we'll take a few moments to just do this inner process. It is as simple as observing and acknowledging whatever comes present and just releasing it and seeing it go up into the light. Just continue doing this and letting go. And just gently allowing it to finish up. As it brings itself towards completion here, when you're ready, just find yourself going into gratitude and thanking God for this time, this opportunity, this experience to be in the loving and spend time in greater union with God. And just find peace beginning to replace these areas where there may have been struggle and turmoil. That through the loving, it brings peace. So peace, be still, and know that you and God are one. as you're ready, you can just allow yourself to become more present back in the body. If you wish, you can open your eyes. All right. Well, it is that time of year for peace and joy, as well as reaction and turmoil. It's always a time that we find ourselves often trying to really experience more the joy of the holidays, and that we look forward with expectation to more celebration or time with loved ones, that we really look for a time of union in the world that we hope to experience as a joyful time of gathering. And it often is, but at the same time, it often brings forward the times of stress and difficulty that we sometimes find ourselves now being drawn up within our consciousness, often those expectations around the holidays of the things we wish for, want, what we hope for, are often those things where maybe those expectations are not met, that we find ourselves, unhappy or even depressed with family or friends and things not going the way we wished or wanted. That the time of the holidays, it stirs all of these things within us, both the joy and the sadness. And I always find it's very interesting because we often will struggle to be happy, make ourselves happy, be joyful. And yet if there's something in us that's in reaction or sad or angry even, that we'll often try to push it away because it's uncomfortable. We don't want to deal with that now. I don't want to deal with that because I want things to be happy. I want to have a good time with my friends, family in these times of gathering. But yet when we do that level of avoiding, we find it ever pushing against us, causing an internal pressure, so that when we do get together now, such as in family gatherings, we find that pressure up against ourselves internally. Well, we're trying to be happy and joyful out here participating, but yet there's this other thing in us that is trying to do that and trying to avoid the other that's not happy. And that causes an internal conflict, obviously. And yet those are the things that are so important for us to look at, because those are the things within us that really need our loving and acceptance, let alone forgiveness. We often may think it's other people around us, our parents, our siblings, our children, our co-workers, even our friends we feel may have wronged us or said or did something to hurt us. And so we often find ourselves blaming them out there. And it's even harder when we look at it as something out here. It's another's fault. Well, because of what they said or did, this is how I feel. And during the holidays, it just intensifies everything, because there is so much expectation that this is supposed to be a joyful, loving time of the year, especially around family and loved ones. And so it brings all this together But then what do we do with it? Well, I've seen families end up, drinking, and when they get drunk, you don't have the inhibitions, and you just start saying, and there's often big family fights and fallouts, and then people don't talk to each other, So yeah, there's big change, and it may seem disturbing, but at the same time, well, maybe sometimes the truth gets spoken of the disturbances. The problem is when it's put out of blame, it's that blaming of others that causes the real separation. We think if we can push away these feelings we have, it's often trying to get away or push away the people, the circumstances that create this inside of us, rather than beginning to really look at, well, what can I do to take ownership, to take responsibility for those thoughts and feelings that are inside of me? Yeah, maybe it's true that these outer circumstances may have triggered where I go into reaction with what's being said or done out here around me with others. But what is that inside of me that is in reaction? Is it my own expectations? I'm not really having a great time or a happy time when that's really all I want to do? Is it bringing things forward from childhood that are unresolved? Or is it just some current situation that's just not really being handled or dealt with? And so that's getting in the way inside of us. Instead of getting honest and accepting, working with what's present, we try to push it away. And that's what often then now causes the outer situations to turn out not so wonderful. That's why in holidays you'll often see, whether it's arguments or blow-ups, or you'll see people shut down and pull away, because those are the whole fight or flight responses we give in this world. Or what's the other one nowadays I hear sometimes? Instead of fight or flight, basically we go numb. It's like we're participating, but we're just numb and shut down, walking through the motions. Any of them are where we're in separation, not just with others, but really disconnected from the truth of how we feel, what we think, what's running inside. Yet, why do we avoid these things? Why do we, in a sense, not handle them or deal with them? And I found it's often just because, one, we don't have the tools or the support or the know-how of how to handle that. But the other big factor, really, more than that, is often there's some type of a fear that we're afraid that if we really do or say something, then we're going to lose something. There's always this fear of loss, whatever that is, whether it's loss of life, loss of connection, loss of control, loss of fantasies, expectations, wants, and desires, loss of relationship. But ultimately, what? What are we really afraid of losing? And obviously, ultimately, it gets down to a loss of love. And then when we have that, we feel alone, right? We can be around other people, but yet feel so alone. That loss of love or loss of connection, maybe, is another way of saying that. Especially for those of you that are feelers, like I am. I'll feel it. So when my relationships with people, I like to feel that loving connection. And if it's not there, I find myself in some type of, usually, some type of, I guess I'd call it like a struggle, trying to find a way to connect. And then I'll use my words, my actions, my whatever, trying to connect with others so that I feel that movement of loving and exchange there. And if I don't, I'll often give it the good attempts. And then sometimes if it's not there, I might just let it go, at least for the time being. And then just really see, well, how do I want to handle what's inside of me? And something I've been really giving a lot of attention to and focus for the last year or so is all those feelings that come up within me that may be disturbing, where I feel hurt, or maybe in the past I felt deceived or let down. People saying things that I've counted on and then they don't follow through or they don't do. We all have those in situation, promises people make or promises we make to ourselves. We're coming up in a couple of weeks, not only the holidays, but part of the holidays is what? The new year. New Year's are often resolutions, right? How many times do we make New Year's resolutions and then we let ourselves down by not following through with what we said or intended to do, right? So it can be just our own or with others, whether it's something they were going to do for us or something we agreed to do for others and we let them down. So there's still a letdown in there. And that's often what comes with the holidays. But again, it really comes down to what do we do with it? So what I've been working on this last year, those uncomfortable feelings where I may go into reaction and get angry about something. But then when I look deeper, I realize, wow, there's something in there that is not being answered that I had hoped for, that I wanted, that I expected or counted on. And then I'll sometimes find myself going into a sadness because wow, all these things I'd hoped for, well, they're not happening. They didn't happen, or it turned out really bad, or it turned out completely different than what I wanted. So there's that sadness that comes. And so often when that shows up in me, I find myself trying to give it to God, doing all our LAF work. I forgive this, I forgive them, I forgive myself. I forgive myself for thinking this. I forgive myself for judging how I feel. That's another big one. When we often get angry or sad, some type of a feeling or thought we don't like, we often judge ourselves for even having that, having thought that, let alone feeling the way we do. Like a lot of us, often grow up like it's not okay to cry. It's not okay to feel the way we do. And definitely don't express that. Keep it in. Why do so many people need therapists nowadays and, medications and things? Because there's so much has been bottled in. Well, yeah, that energy is trying to find an outlet. It's going to back up in us and cause all kinds of problems if we don't give it some type of expression to move it, right? But we're often so afraid of dealing with whatever that the situations are that may have triggered or caused these things within us. And so when I find that, as I was saying, I find myself trying to, in the forgiveness of trying to even give things to God, I found myself trying to get rid of, right? I don't like this feeling. It's uncomfortable. I want to get rid of it. Oh, so hey, and I allow them to teach loving, accepting, forgiving. Let me see if I can get rid of it, through forgiving it, through giving it up to God, through doing that LAF work inside, like the LAF workbook, right? Let me see if I can get rid of it that way. You notice even the words I'm saying? Well, yeah, because when we're in reaction or angry or hurt, we just want to get rid of these things. So we'll go through and do all these exercises in forgiveness, but yet we still find this going on and running in us. And then we'll think, well, why isn't forgiveness working? Why is this not working for me? Why are these things still running and I'm still going through all this? Well, first of all, that's an indicator. Whatever we are doing, we didn't really do it. If we really did it, it would actually move and release. So what I've been doing the last year or so is going the next step, going deeper. Like, okay, so when I've done a lot of this LAF work, find myself forgiving and giving up to God, even when it's just my own, doing what I can to take responsibility for my own thoughts, feelings, actions, and reactions. But yet when I keep having those same reactions, it's like, what's going on? Well, right there is the main thing I started to realize. anytime I'm trying to get rid of something because I'm uncomfortable with it, well, that's just like placing a judgment on it. Trying to get rid of it, it's a separation inside, right? The way things work spiritually is not by causing separation, by trying to distance ourselves or get rid of things. And right now, yeah, you could say people, places, situations, circumstances, but what I'm talking about right now is our feelings and our thoughts of what's going on inside of us, the reactions we have, regardless of the external circumstances. Anytime I found myself trying to get rid of something because I didn't like it, well, it's that getting rid of that causes separation and why it wouldn't go, why it wouldn't be released, no matter how much or how hard I tried or how long I kept doing it. So last year, what I've been working on is like, okay, how can I do this different? Instead of trying to get rid of these things through doing this inner work, how about if I try to not get rid of it and just be with it, right? In other words, how about if I actually try accepting and loving what's going on instead of trying to get rid of it? Just claiming it, right? That's why I like take responsibility for our thoughts, feelings, actions, reactions. Well, that's why I like using the word ownership, to own that. Well, another way of saying to take ownership is to accept it, to be with it, not try to get rid of it, to accept it. So when we do this, right, accept, you guys remember that 4-step forgiveness process I laid out a while back? I forgive you, God bless you, I love you, I take you into my heart. Okay, these are stages, like through the chakras, of this forgiveness or unifying process, really. That's the funny thing. It starts out with, I forgive you, whatever the thought or feeling, whatever the situation, circumstance. But if we look at now this level of ownership of whatever that thing is we're in reaction with inside of us, our own thoughts and feelings, if we say, all right, I forgive you, I forgive my own thoughts and feelings. God bless you, God bless these thoughts and feelings. I love you. I love you. That loving that truly comes from the soul. Really, instead of saying like I'm doing here, I should be doing it from here. I, the real true I, the I am, love you, these thoughts and feelings that are mine. And then what? I take you into my heart. So that's really an action of receiving. And therein lies the challenge. Because when we are in disturbance with something, the natural human reaction is to push it away, to go into separation, to get away from the disturbance, not bring it into our hearts. Are you kidding me? And there's the big fear. This is where the biggest challenge is bringing it into our hearts, let alone truly loving it. It's one thing just to say, I love you. Anybody can say that. We can just do that as a protective defense mechanism, right? If somebody's got a lot of desire, want, attachment, expectation on us, and if we can get a moment of peace from whatever that expectation is on us, if all we have to say is I love you, and that seems to temporarily, make it okay, we'll just do that, right? It's the way that we found to deal with things in life, people, situations, circumstances. Whether that's literally saying I love you to somebody or whether it's doing or saying something else, depending on the situation, circumstances, and relationship. If you pay attention, you'll see all the behaviors we do in the world around us with others to try to handle whatever these things are we feel, that we see, that we hear, that we think. So anything that causes that reaction, the disturbance in us, one of the last things we'll do is literally say, oh, sure, I accept you, I love you, and I take you into my heart. But yet, it's the very thing we actually need to do because that is the very actual spiritual action. The spiritual action is not saying words or going through, the motions. The real spiritual action is the real movement of spirit, the way it actually works. Okay, you guys have heard me in the past talk kind of the science of spirituality. That which we put out is going to come back to us, right? That what goes around comes around. We're the cause, we're the source. So whatever we put out, it's got to come back to its creator. Just like God created us, and we have the good news is we have to return back to God. Well, we're made in the likeness of God as co-creators. So whatever we create has to come back to us, even our thoughts and feelings, let alone the reactions and actions are going to come back. But when we have the negative thoughts and feelings, obviously those are the things that we're struggling to keep separate. We don't want them to come back. We're trying to keep them out there. We put them out there, not even realizing maybe that it was us who put them out there, but it was so long ago we don't remember, whether it's not only this life, like in childhood, but another life even. It's like, wow, these things are trying to come back to their creator. That's the real science of this, okay? What we put out is coming back now. And so as it comes back, if it's uncomfortable, something we'd call more negative, that's where we often will react and put up our defenses. What are we trying to protect, defend, and control? So that right there, it's that simple. When we can begin to open up, become vulnerable. Why do you think we say all the time, be open, honest, and vulnerable? The truth will set you free, but only if you're open and vulnerable. Why? Because when you become open, right, instead of closed off, you become open. Well, what is this? It's a state of receptivity. So when I open up, I'm receiving. This is I take you into my heart. So all the reaction, that hurt, that anger, that disturbance, whatever, it doesn't matter what it is. It literally does not matter what it is. Doesn't matter the storyline, the situation, circumstances, people involved, none of that matters. All that matters is you now just opening and receiving that back into your heart. I take you into my heart, right? And then it is done. That's it. So as we take it into our heart, well, what are we doing? We're bringing it into the loving so that the loving truly now can release it. The ego can't really release these things. It's the loving that releases these things. That's why even in meditations like what we did, that forgiveness is like what? Through the soul's loving, through God's loving, the Holy Spirit. We do it through that. The giving up, the letting go, the releasing is done through spirit, not through the ego. The ego will try to do the getting rid of. That's the struggle we have. Because when it's done through the ego, well, that's an indicator, just so everybody knows, when you find yourself doing these processes, even though we may use the spiritual languaging, when we're doing it through the ego, we're still going to struggle with it, and it's always going to be a process of trying to get rid of it. It causes separation, in other words. That right there is the indicator that it's been coming through your ego. Good intentions, obviously, to get free of it, but nonetheless, when it's done through the ego, it doesn't work. So just know that. Anytime you question, well, am I doing this through my ego or through my soul? Am I really doing this? Well, if it keeps coming back around and it hasn't released and it's not done and it keeps repeating, just know you've been making some good attempts, but unfortunately it's been through the ego. That's why it's not done. There's your indicator there where you go, how many times do I have to do this? Well, the answer out there is you do it as many times as you need to do it till it's done, right? Well, here's the real answer. When you actually really do it through the soul and the Holy Spirit, it'll be done. And that only takes one time. All the other times, it's just rehearsal. It's the ego running the process, practice, which is great. But eventually we've got to let go of that approach and really do it from the soul and loving. When that happens, it's accepting, it's taking into our hearts, it's receiving. We receive whatever it is we created, our thoughts and feelings that created the reaction. And when it's done through truly the Spirit, the soul and the Holy Spirit, there's a real receiving now where that which we put out comes into the loving, and the loving fulfills it. Now we bring it in to the loving, and then it's lifted up, and in that lifting up is where it's just dissolved. It literally is just dissolved. And all that remains is just our loving. Our loving is what gave it life. Literally, our thoughts and feelings, the loving of our soul gave it life. So as we receive these thoughts and feelings back, what we're doing is actually receiving the divine sparks of our loving that gave these thoughts and feelings life. We just don't realize that's what's going on because the thoughts and the feelings themselves are hiding that divine spark. They're clouding it from our awareness. So the way this looks is it looks like we'll be receiving our thoughts and feelings. But the truth is, it's that divine spark of loving, our own loving, that gave it life that we're receiving. And when we finally open up to receive that, then that letting go of the thoughts and feelings of disturbance, well, that's where the illusion of what the thought and feelings were now just dissolved. And then all that's left is that divine spark of loving that is now returned now back into union with our own soul. Okay? And so when we do that, when we put out this stuff and bring it home and now allow it to come back into union with our own soul, that's where we set ourselves free. And in that, now God, through the Holy Spirit, can now begin to take us, lift us, to receive us, the soul, back into God's heart. We have to free ourselves in order to give God the space to free us. We free ourselves, God frees us. We bring home all that we created and put out. That's how we release ourselves from it, to bring it home back into union. And in that, then it's literally giving God permission to bring us home and bring us back into union with God. Similar, same action. This is how we actually learn to be co-creators with God. We're here to learn to be what it is to be creators. And in this world, it's positive and negative. So literally sharing more of the science of this with everybody, if you can understand that and begin to see the practical application in your own life and practice it, that's where you'll begin to have the experience and awareness now of when you do it in your own thoughts and feelings with the circumstances you're in your own life, and it'll create that inner transformation. This is self-empowerment I'm talking about, and true inner transformation. When you do this, it's a wonderful movement of loving. You experience the joy, the peace. This is where you'll truly get happy and have joyful holidays. But the joyful holidays or holy days can be any time of the year that you do this. And then if you're really walking this path to sun and light, well, then the next step, obviously, in the meditation where God can now begin to bring us home. Again, this is really how these things work. But because it is a process of spiritual awareness, not one of ego knowledge, that it takes time to be able to let go of that ego process and begin to see the true movement and action of spirit going on behind it. And that's okay. Just realize it takes time. That's not about am I doing this wrong or right? It's not about that. It's about you just keep practicing the way you understand things, and then over time, you'll start to see and understand what the ego is and how it operates. And then in that, there's a natural detachment from the ego. As you see its process, you'll begin to let go of that, and you begin to, and it looks like I'm pulling away or detaching, but this detaching is more of a freedom from, so that you can observe more the ego as your vehicle in this world rather than being caught up in it, believing this is who you are. Okay, and that process takes place through what I'm sharing here. That's why I like to give some idea of the science, but then the practical application and our thoughts and feelings and what we go through in the world around us and how that looks as the outer reflection, but what's going on internally. I always like to try to connect the dots from the inner and the outer so that hopefully people can begin to see how that works and now work it. But it's again through the inner awareness and how that movement of loving works that we have to become more aware of, and that's what takes place through the meditation. People who call it intuition, it's like, yeah, there's a little bit of that, but in truth, it's truly a spiritual knowing that happens as we do the meditation and awaken to really more the truth of how the divine works. Okay? So we got to give ourselves the chance, let alone the opportunities that are always here for us. I mean, the truth is, sooner or later, we got to handle all these things because let's just say it this way, the Lord of reflection, as we know, is Lucifer. His job is to hold us accountable to what we create. This is the classroom, what we put out and create. Well, the lesson's not fulfilled until we fully receive back what we put out. Because when we receive it back, well, one, it's all done through loving. So then when we do, it's a joyful experience. And then as we do that, all of a sudden there's more of the awareness. That's how karma gets handled. Everybody asks for their karma to be cleared. Heal me, take it away, God, or the angels and guides, whatever. Everybody does that because they're in reaction with their own creations, but they've judged it or labeled it as a negative or bad. And so we all struggle with that, not realizing how this actually works and what we're doing with that. It's not until we can let go, one, of making these things wrong or bad and realizing where it actually came from ourselves, and now it's returning, but now we're not allowing it to return to fulfill. And all we got to do is let it return to be fulfilled. And then the learning or the karma, it gets done. It actually gets completed because it is absorbed back into the loving. And now we have the wisdom of the experience. And in that wisdom, we are now learning now how to be a creator and a co-creator with God. Simple action. We just have to participate and work with it the way it works. So what I've been doing, especially in this time of year, it usually starts right after, maybe starts earlier than Halloween now, especially Thanksgiving, right? Christmas seemed to start right after, even we saw Christmas decorations at Halloween even this year. It's like, whoa. So it started earlier this year, so it's given us a good couple months, right? So all that started picking up. So I've been working this literally on a daily basis, what I'm sharing right now. So when I feel all these energies, doesn't matter if it's something I did or created or something coming in from somebody else, I still do the same process, just to receive it in loving and let the loving handle it. If it's my own stuff, the karmic lesson will be resolved, it'll be fulfilled, I'll have awareness and learn, and I'll just experience the loving and then the peace that comes with that. If it's not mine, it'll come in and then there'll be awareness and alerting yet for myself in that, and then the loving begins to, in a sense, give me a whole nother level of learning when it's not mine and it's somebody else's. But in that willingness to participate with that and accepting that, I free myself in it, and then in that, that now can go back to whoever that belongs to. And what am I saying? You know how we all project on each other, what we want, what we desire, what we expect of those around us. So we project on one another, put our stuff on one another. That's what I'm talking about right now. So when it's somebody else's stuff that they've projected on you, well, that's part of the learning too. There's their stuff that in truth we can never own or take in. Well, it'll come in around us and cause all this stuff in our consciousness. And in the beginning, we usually will go into reaction thinking it's ourselves. We'll personalize it, in other words, and then we'll be in reaction with it, trying to work it out. Like, what am I doing wrong? Why am I feeling this way? What's going on? We'll go into a state of confusion and begin to doubt ourselves, not trust ourselves. Those are the indicators often that it came from somebody else. But then we are reacting to that. So we have our own reactions on top of what came in from somebody else, right? So it's a double whammy. But what I found is if we just handle our own reactions, only handling our own reactions, we begin to let go of these things that came in and were put on us from others. By just being responsible for our own reactions, our thoughts and feelings here, that will release us from whatever is put on us. And then in that, we'll get clarity, we'll get understanding, we'll start to have more of that loving and acceptance. And as that unfolds, there's a natural letting go or forgiveness now of these things that were put on us from others. But because we're living now in this place of loving and acceptance in ourselves, there's nothing for these projections to hang on to. Before, they would come in and we would grab them. But now by doing all this inner work, we're letting them go. So they have nothing that's holding on to them anymore now. So now they'll just release and leave our consciousness and go back to where they came from. In other words, whoever created it, it'll go back to the creator. But if it's not ready to, it'll go on to the next person in line who's willing to be the recipient of that projection. But eventually it's going to always come back to the creator. And of course, vice versa. Whatever we put on other people, our own thoughts, desires, expectations, same process. Sooner or later, what we put on them is going to come back to us. In the world, how does that look? Well, it looks like somebody will say, you know what? They're going to start saying no to you. No, I don't really want to do that. No, I don't really feel that way. No, I don't want to do this anymore with you. And the same thing, you'll be like, you know what? You'll discover, what is it? The power of no, I guess you could call it. You say, nope, don't want to do that. Nope, I hear you, but I'm not going to buy that anymore. Nope, I'm not going to try to people please anymore. Nope, that's not mine to do, that's yours. Nope, I'm not going to do that anymore. And then your own thoughts and feelings. Nope, I'm not going to do those thoughts and feelings anymore because all they did was support the illusion and the lies that I was living and giving my power away to. I don't care if you call it people pleasing, whatever it is you want to call it in the world. But there is this process that as we're going through it internally, it'll look and sound like these practical ways in the world around us, in all of our relationships and the actions we do, okay? And then even our thoughts and feelings will change, because then we'll start having more uplifting thoughts, more feelings of joy, and definitely more loving and acceptance, and actually begin to enjoy life rather than always seeking to escape from it and always trying to avoid others because we don't like the disturbance that always happens when we interact because of the stuff it brings up. Okay? Have I missed anything? Have I touched into? And obviously there's a lot of other ways we could describe it, but I try to give the general sense of what it is, how to deal with it. And then hopefully you guys can take it. And if not, Jim always gives great practical life storylines and what that really looks and sounds like in the world, obviously. He's quite the storyteller. I'm more the how-to guy, you're the more the here's how it plays out. So underneath it all, if you really want to begin to enjoy your holidays more, start accepting and receiving, truly loving by accepting and receiving all these things you're in disturbance and reaction with. Take the chance. Most people are too scared to do what I'm saying because they have this fear that if they actually do it, they're going to lose everything that they think they want and love. That's underlying fear. The underlying fear is what am I afraid of losing? Everybody's afraid of losing, right? I don't want to be a loser. Well, try it out because believe me, all you're going to lose is all the lies, the false, and all the hurt and pain and anger that goes with living all those lies. That's what you'll lose. And then you'll gain all the loving and the joy that you've been truly seeking all along in all of the outer situations, circumstances, and relationships around you. That's what you'll gain. But you've got to be willing to take the risk because some relationships will dissolve and fall apart because some people, they're not ready to move into loving and acceptance of all these things. And so they'll go try to run their upset somewhere else if you're not going to participate with it, right? And that happens. It doesn't matter if it's a family member, a friend, a work situation, whatever. When you start really changing your patterns and move into more loving and acceptance, you're going to get freedom. And since you won't be willing to engage in the old patterns, then anybody who tries to run those old patterns on you, they won't have a place to connect. So they will either let go of trying to run that on you, or they'll go somewhere else to find somebody else to now do this with. And so you'll see things transform right around you because you transformed internally by your internal actions. And so you're going to see some type of external reflection of that as you do it internally. So truly, you want more of the joy in the outer, especially during the holidays? Start doing this inner process of ownership, receiving. Say, yep, I received the disturbance. I received the negativity. I received, because if you remember what I said earlier, it's not really negativity, disturbance you're receiving back the light of your own soul that helped to create and give life to all these things. That's what you're really receiving. And when you do that, all the other stuff that you were afraid of, it just releases, dispels, literally dispels. So all the spells that were put on you, dispel them all. This is literally what people are really doing when they go into witchcraft and all that. That's all it is. We should call it wishcraft. We're all witches in that way. Wishcraft. So all those wishes, spells, will dispel them. This is how to do that. Literally is how to do that. And then you really will enjoy not only the holidays, but then moving forward in your life. And I'll tell you what, I mean, really, make no mistake about it, these holidays are an intensified period that are opportunities for greater joy or greater disturbance. But the choice of that is based on what we do with it all internally. And there are periods of time that there's greater opportunity to work with this and make a true change in our lives and have a real transformation that we may have been seeking and wanting for a long time. Well, right now is that time. Coming right up to the end of the year here, this is big time of transition. That's why even New Year's resolutions, right? Well, to have a New Year's resolution, we need to let go of something old so that the new can replace the old. So we're at that time where forgiveness is king. So whatever you can truly forgive and let go of through this process, you are literally creating the space now for whatever that is that's new, that you really want in your life, that's going to now bring you more joy and upliftment rather than drag you down into more reaction and disturbance. Right? Let go, let God. That's another way of saying it. Out with the old, in with the new. It's all that. And this is the time of year that we have, it seems, extra opportunity just because of the focus of all this time together and gathering, no matter what you call it. Whether we want to do the Santa Claus thing or whether we want to do the Christ thing, right? Maybe it's a little bit of both. And bring them inside and give birth to that which is in, which is what? The joke, the divine presence. So if you want that the spiritual gifts and the divine presence, then this is the way to do it. Forgiveness, acceptance, and loving. And there's the transformation. Maybe that's the real gift we're seeking in this time of the holidays, both in giving as well as receiving. Let it start with receiving your gifts from Santa Claus, which is symbolic truly of God. And then you can turn around and share those with others. Okay.
All right. Well, that was very good, actually. I really enjoyed that. And it's good even for this time of year to really be thinking in those terms. That was very well done. The thing I want to share about today is something that came forward when I was in meditation earlier today. um, like I've said over the years, when I was 5, 6, 7, I began to go into time with God every day and spend time praying. Well, I didn't realize that the prayer that I was doing was really a meditation, but I just called it prayer. And it was really just talking with God, sharing with God, and then being with God, listening to God, however that would be. And I realized around 10 years old that there's this presence, this quality in my meditation that I was always trying to get to, trying to connect to and be with if I could. But I didn't always get it because my mind or my emotions or the world around me just kept distracting me and pulling me out, and I didn't get to that place where I knew something was much more present and sacred than all the stuff of the world. But at 10 years old, I realized how to get there. And I realized I could get there anytime I want to if I just hold the focus of that. And so I began to do that, and I realized as I was meditating one day and I was in this presence that I heard a voice say, I'm the living, loving essence, and you are my living, loving essence. And all that is my living, loving essence. And there's nothing more than that. Nothing. It is all. And that's where I came up with the statement of, we are all the living, loving essence of the Lord. And it's true. That's who we are. We are all created in that, of that. And that is our beingness. And I just would ever sit quietly and keep holding for that. I wouldn't let my mind wander. I wouldn't let my emotions rise up. I would just set them aside and say, not now, I'm going to be here in this. And I found I could get into that essence very easily if I could just let go of all the other. Well, at times it worked real well. And at other times it was like my mind or my emotions would just go into rebellion and do everything it could to distract me, get me caught up in the world, get me caught up outside. And it was just amazing the battle that they would put up to stop me from going into that. And I don't know how long that battle lasted. It went on, but it wasn't very long because I realized I have a choice. I can either set all that aside, I can dismiss it, I can forgive it, I can love it, I can do whatever, and just hold my focus to what it is I want to be in right now, which was that essence, that quality of loving in God. And so I began at the age of 10, and I remember this so well, of just sitting there and letting go, not pushing it away, but letting go of all the disturbance, the distractions, the noise inside, the noise outside, and just hold to the focus of that one simple little presence of that living, loving essence. And then I would go into it and it would expand up around me, it felt like, and I would be in the essence of God. I would be just living in that for a moment. And I could hold on to it for a period of time, but then for some reason, my body, my mind, I don't know what, but I would just let go and come back present into the world again. And sometimes it seemed like I was there for quite a while, and other times it seemed like it was just for a moment. But that moment was what I needed. Just to be in it for that moment gave me everything, and it helped me to find my center that I didn't even know I had, in the sense of that centeredness in God. But I could now find that anytime I wanted. I could be at school and something would be going on, and I would just look up inside of myself. And I did. I would always look up into that because that's where I would find it. I would look up and I would find that living, loving essence. And when I went up into that, all this other just dropped away. I didn't have to do anything with it. I didn't have to dismiss it. I didn't have to push it aside. I just would rise above it. And that's what I've done ever since I was 10 years old. I just ever look and rise up above it and continue to choose into God first. And that's the reason I talk about that so much, because it's choose God first and everything else falls into place. And that's important to remember. And many of you have found that now. You know, I've found that this pathway is the simplest pathway out there. There's so many different kinds of paths leading to so many different places. And you have to do all these things, all these actions, all these rituals, chant these certain statements, whatever, and then do the work. But with this pathway, it isn't about doing anything other than loving God and allowing God to love you and to live into that flow of loving. It's that simple. It's not easy, but it's that simple. But once you get caught up in that flow, once you taste it, once you feel it, once you see it, it is easier to choose back into that place. And then it gets simpler and simpler because you know it's all up here. It's all inside and up. That's where God dwells within us. That's where our soul dwells within us. That's where we connect into that living, loving essence that we are a part of. And so I'm so grateful for this pathway because it is so simple. And I say it when so much, but I've had so many people come up over the years and just say, this isn't simple. It's hard. Trying to meditate 2.5 hours a day, or even just trying to meditate, not even 2.5 minutes a day, is hard. And I say, it's hard because you're making it that way. You have to let go. You have to relax. You don't want to fight it. You want to go with it because there's a movement that we want to go with that will take us higher and higher inside. But if we won't go with it, if we won't let go of all the outer and connect into the inner, yeah, it's hard because we're going to always be sitting there trying. And this isn't about trying. This is about being. It's about letting go and just be. Be in the stillness, be in the quiet, be in the loving, be in that movement of flow of upward into God. It's not so hard to be, but it's sometimes hard to let go of all those things that block us from the being. And my mind is just as good as you and yours in a way of blocking it, trying to stop it. My mind will play the game. It'll get me caught up in things, and I'll daydream, I'll wander, I'll get caught up on a thought or a process, and off I go. I'm not in the center, I'm not going upward, I'm just wandering around in the world of illusions. And it may be a half hour before I catch it and realize, oh my God, what have I done? And I won't get caught back in trying to let go of all that. I'll just say, nope, I'm choosing here. I'm choosing spirit. I'm choosing the living, loving essence. And I'll just go back into being that, looking for that, connecting into that. And it's easy to connect if you let go of all the other. It's more challenging if you keep bringing the mind with you into that search, because the mind has no comprehension of what that is and isn't interested in it. It's interested in what it's interested in. And who is that then that says, I want to go beyond all that mind? I want to connect into what the truth is, the loving is. I want to go into God. The mind has no concept of God because the mind is not of God. Everything is of God, but the mind is a part of this eternal or external part of ourselves, the physical part, the outer creation, not the inner. So the one thing I would say is, in your meditation, look to see if you can feel, be aware of that divine flow of loving, that essence that I've always talked about. If you can connect into that, then you become a part of all that is. And if there's something that you need to be aware of or know or do, it'll come present while you're in there. But you don't search for it. You let it come to you if that's the case. And you'll know that that's God's direction for you in this moment. Who you are is loving. And the more we can begin to live in that loving and share in that loving, the more we will be at peace and be where we really need to be. And all that is of the world that isn't loving and is going to try to distract us from the loving, we can just let it go. We don't participate. We don't give it attention. And if it is someone we want to be connected with, even with that distraction, that's fine. But be aware of that which they're doing in their lives, and don't let them put that on you. Because a lot of people will. They'll want you to join them in their process, in their disturbance, in their separation, rather than trying to either walk away from you because you're not what they want, or try to get you to continually join them in their disturbance. And oftentimes they do that by creating a disturbance for you to get caught up in. So pay attention and see where you're putting your attention. If you're making others more important than yourself, you're hurting yourself. You're not helping yourself. And you're hurting them. You're not helping them. So I find that I live a very simple life. I don't have 100 people or 20 people surrounding me all the time to be with me or me with them. I want to be in that quiet. I want to be in the stillness. I want to be in that flow of loving. And I don't want a lot of things around me that will distract me. And for many people, I've found that people I thought were friends will walk away because I'm just not giving to them what I want, or they want. Because they want me to be a part of their noise, their reactions, and whatever that process is that they live in all the time. And I just choose not to do that. So many of you have discovered this inner center peace of quiet, loving, joy, and are choosing into that more and more every day. That I see inside. I see you joining into that flow. I see you choosing the quiet and the stillness rather than the outer and the disturbance. And that's good. I'm glad to see it. I'm glad to be able to witness all that is going on with the disciples. It brings joy to me. It gives me great, great joy to witness people truly not just stepping on the path, but walking it daily, lovingly, focused and aware, and learning how to live into it even in the day with their eyes open and the world around them calling to them. They can still hold that centeredness inside where that living, loving essence is. So look to the light, look to the loving, listen for the sound. For in those elements, you will find the truth that you're looking for. In that light, in that sound, you will find the peace. You will find the joy. And chanting the name of God is the way to connect into that centeredness. That light and the sound, the rod and the staff that David talked about in the Psalms. That light and the sound is the energy upon which we build inside of us as we chant the name of God over and over and over. And that becomes our new foundation that we stand on. And that foundation stands above all the world. And the more we build it higher and higher, the higher we get, the more we rise above this world. And we don't hear the noise so much. We don't feel the disturbance so much because we know we have come above all that. And what's interesting is we'll even find our friends, our family members around us that are close to us or are important to us, actually lifting up into that for themselves, not through their actions, not through their process, but because of the love that we have for them, assist them in rising, assist them in going higher. I've seen that even in my own family and in others. It's not the same thing as a path of liberation for them, but it definitely is a path of greater freedom for them that could lead to liberation if they chose to. But what's more important is that you're doing this for yourself, not for others, but for you. And continue doing it for you, because God is calling you home. That's why you got initiated so long ago. And so many people, when they get initiated, they think, okay, now it's going to be great. The world's going to bow at my feet. All my problems will be solved. My bills will be paid. The love of my life will come into my life. And on and on and on. I've heard it so many times. And I've seen people walk away from this pathway because that's what they came to do, and they didn't get it. So they went out into the world looking for it elsewhere. And that's fine. Once they've been initiated, once they have that sacred name, that name will go with them as it goes with you, no matter what you do or say, whether you meditate or not. That sacred name is in you and with you. And it will serve you even if you are not serving yourself by speaking that name inside. Because that's what God does. God loves us so much. God wants us to be in freedom and in liberation. And God will do his part even if we don't do ours. But many of us have walked this pathway now for many years. And we've let go of those illusions that we came into this pathway for and realize now that this pathway is much more than just all those things we thought it was going to give us. And that's good, because now you can really live into that living, loving essence. Now you can learn how to live into the simplicity of this pathway. And that means letting go a lot of the outer and choosing the stillness and the quiet inside. I remember when Brian first started getting involved with me in my life, and I looked up to God one day because he was just full of questions and wanting all these answers and talking a lot about this and that and the other. And I looked up to God and I said, "Are you sure? Are you sure?" And God said, "I know what I'm doing." And that's all I needed to hear. And so I just went with it, and it has expanded into something quite wonderful. And it's wonderful to witness a soul here in my presence, growing and becoming aware of God and living in God now. But I had my questions, I had my doubts in the beginning. But I trusted what God said, and God knew what he was doing. And when I say he, God is not a he, God is not a she, God is a presence. But it's just funny how we in the world relate to the world as polarity, and we give it a he or a she to have a quality about it. God's really an it, I guess. So find God within you however you're going to do that. The sacred name, the meditation is the easiest way. And I think most of you now know that. I've also had people say, you say the same thing over and over, maybe in different ways, but you're saying the same thing. And I say, that's all I have to talk about. The path is easy, the path is simple, there's no complexity to it. There's no all these outer rituals and inner rituals that we have to do. We just want to connect in that flow of loving with God. And that's what I have to talk about. Fortunately, I've had a lot of experience and things that go on in my daily life, inwardly and outwardly, that gave me things to talk about, my stories. My stories are really quite amazing. When I go back and I listen to them and reminisce about where that started or where that happened, it's it's wonderful to see how the living presence of God comes present for me to live it in different experiences, but always find the same essence of loving in everyone and in everything. And I hope and pray that each one of you are feeling that, knowing that, experiencing that for yourself. I'm sure you are, because that's what this path is about. This path isn't about letting go and not participating. This path is choosing where you participate and how you participate. It's not about isolating yourself and pulling away. It's about participating, but in a way that keeps you connected to God. And sometimes that participation is at a distance, and sometimes it's up close. And that's something we all have to learn. Sometimes the ones we love the most, it's really hard to be around because of their disturbance that they always are running inside themselves. And so we find that it's easier to maybe have them at a distance where we can participate with them however we can, but not be right there in their process all the time, every day. And that's okay. They're learning their lessons, and we're not here to teach them their lessons or to do it for them. We are here to be a source of loving for everyone and let that loving help them, however the loving can move in them and bring them forward. I found it much easier to let God do the work than me. Much easier. And God will always do God's part with each and every person. Sometimes I look at all that's going on in people's lives and I go, are you really sure you're there? Are you sure you're doing the work? But then something will show up and I can see it so clearly. Who they were and who they are is different. And it's a good difference. And who they were and who they are shows me that they are on their own private little path, making their way to God. But it's sometimes a long road because that's their choice. If they could sit down and meditate and go inside and be with God inside, that path would shorten and widen and become so much easier. But sometimes we have to learn the hard way to find the simple way. And I've learned to just let people learn the hard way if that's what they need and want. It's not always easy to witness. It's not always fun to participate in watch and all of that. But at the same time, there's a beautiful movement of loving and grace that is in all of it. And when you can begin to see God in all things, then you begin to see God in all the disturbance as well. So choose God first and God only. Choose into living the living, loving essence of the Lord that you are and being aware of it by holding your attention inward and upward in your meditation in that centeredness inside. Follow the flow of loving that is in that sacred name and let it lead the way. It may not always bring to you in the moment that which you're wanting right now. God, I need this. I want this. But as they say, it's in God's timing, not yours. And God's timing is different than ours. But I'm trusting in God's timing. I'm believing in God's timing all the time. Because I have learned so much that God knows what God's doing with all of this creation and with me and my life. The simple way is the best. It's the easiest, it's the most grace-filled, and it's one where you're going to learn a great deal about yourself and others and allow others to have their life the way they want it and allow you to have your life the way you want it. So look and find that living, loving essence of God that you are in you. You are a major flow of loving in God. That's what we're here to be, to do, and to rise up into and join into the living, loving essence of God that all is one in. Right now, everything in this creation is a part of that living, loving flow. Find your place in it and live into it and let God express through you that loving, however God wishes to do that. It's simple, it's easy, and that's all I'm going to say because it is simple and easy. Find your simple and easy way if you haven't already done so. Okay. I think that's it for right now. Simple and easy. What?
Do you want to do like we've been doing, the wrap-up meditation to close it out?
Sure. So we'll go ahead and do a few minutes of meditation just to let whatever I've said and whatever Brian has said settle in and become more a part of you and what you're doing. So just close your eyes, get your body comfortable, and just bring your center, bring your attention to the center of your beingness. And just open to receive awareness of that living, loving essence of God that you are. That simplicity, that stillness, that quiet, that essence of loving that is ever moving in you, around you, through you. Just be aware of that. It's eternal in its nature and it's flowing ever. It's ever moving. When we talk about a river of loving, It is just that. It is a river of loving, that essence of God. Just be still, be quiet, and just connect into that flow. you and the Lord are one. Be in the oneness and know that you are one in God. So just begin to bring your attention back outward, bringing with you any awarenesses, any experiences. And I guess we'll move into taking a little bit of a break. And if you want to go back into meditation, that'll be fine too.
Welcome back, everybody. Did I say that already? Welcome back, Jim and Brian.
Welcome on the front end.
We're
The
glad.
front.
We got it worked out on the front end, but not the back end. Is that it?
Yeah, it's working out on the back end too. We're good to go.
Awesome.
All right, so I know we've shared this twice now, but again, as a reminder, at 5:30 p.m. Central Time, we're gonna wrap up taking questions, but continue sharing on the questions that have already come in. So please just get your questions into info@ilm.org by 5:30 Central Time. Alrighty, shall we begin?
Sure.
Do we have any questions?
A few, yes. Enough to get started and then some.
All right.
So, first sharing or question. Hello, Jim, Brian, and Kelsey. Thank God, God knows what God is doing. It's so wonderful to have you all and what you each have to share on this pathway. Brian, in the last week's Confessions and Counselings class, I shared a dream featuring a wedding ring. I forgot to ask something about it. It stood out in the dream, and I wondered about it. That across the top half of the band were alternating white and red stones, which I took to be diamonds and rubies. Do these colors or stones have a significance or meaning? Thank you for any insight you can share about it. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yes is the answer. To there always is a symbology there, and there's different ones, but I'll just share what they mean to me. Well, one, it's often referred to as far as the gems of spirit, often diamonds, rubies, emeralds, all those often represent different aspects or facets of the soul that would really something, um, as you hear us talk about the qualities of God, things like that. So the to me, when I hear the white and the red, I would look at that as well. I know a diamond is a symbol of the soul or the Christ consciousness, the soul awakened. And also the white represents the purity of spirit or the transparent in that case. And the diamond is usually cut in different facets. And one of the most common is like 12 different facets that often referred to as like the 12 apostles and the 12 nations, it's like the 12 and the one that you've often heard us talk about here in ILM. And so to me, though, ultimately it represents soul consciousness, which is what the spiritual marriage is about. The the red in the is often representative of the power. Uh, it can be looked at in different ways. It can be the power of spirit, but also in the physical level. So to me, that also ties in with the initiation that we received physically. So the power, like we talk about the power of the name, so there's that aspect of the power of spirit into the physical level, of which is what initiation is about. So to me, symbolically, that's showing you that through the initiation with there in the power of the name, that's what's, bringing you into the spiritual marriage or awakening to the soul consciousness. Anything
That's
else
very
you'd like
good.
to?
That's clear. Yeah.
And I'm trying to see if I can tap into it because there was something else in the symbology, not just from what you shared now, but last week that I didn't say, but I think it was important. But the main, you've got the main message in there. I just don't recall what it is at the moment. I'm trying to remember. But I already shared about the pearl of great price and all that in there. So, yes, that's correct as far as the wedding ring. So that's pretty good remembrance of the details like that. And honestly, we don't need to understand mentally on this level details like that because spiritually, what matters is that the experience took place. That's why it's important to realize on this pathway, even though we can do Q&A like this and share a lot of information, that can help on this level. It helps us to kind of integrate and receive, and in that understanding, allow that wisdom of our soul to come more present here. But that's okay. But the most important thing is that to realize you're having the inner experience, because that's really what this is about, regardless of whether you understand the experience or any information like what we're talking about surrounding it here. So, okay.
Okay. Next, two questions. One, I have two questions that this talk brought forward for me. First one, I feel like I have a lot of emotional karma to work through. I find that when I go into reaction, it just grabs me and doesn't let go. So when Jim said we need to choose to quote unquote let go, I feel it doesn't do that, and I feel defeated and in the grip of my reactions. The length of time I am in reaction definitely has diminished, and I know when I am in reaction. To meditate at those times, I find that I have to chant Hugh out loud or say a positive affirmation of, quote, I am the presence and power of God, end quote, or listen to a talk just to calm down. I really don't like this and wonder where my power of choice is in all of this. Do you want me to pause there before I read the second one?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
Did you have something?
Well, the one thing I would say is the actions you're taking with the affirmation and listening to a talk is a good way to handle it until you find maybe a simpler way. But that's a good start. And then the simpler way will rise up as well for you so that you can know how to handle it very quickly and easily. The other thing would be to turn to turn inside and just ask the emotions or whatever is disturbing you to be still and quiet for a moment so that you can spend time with yourself and with God. Oftentimes, redirecting that energy can help to actually really redirect the energy. And so it'll maybe quiet down and go away for quite a while before it comes back. You have something?
And then, when you do that, a lot of the movement is not just, this is what my talk was about today, actually, that we're not just trying to push these things away, but by taking the spiritual actions like what you shared, you're doing, and what Jim was sharing, it's so that these things will be awakened and revealed. They always have a lesson they're bringing to us, okay? So when we go into reaction, that's the indicator that we're in separation of closed the door. And today, what I talked about opening up and receiving, well, this is what I was talking about. So when we go into reaction, we're trying to protect something. And unfortunately, though, in that protection, even though it seems like it's helping us because we think, oh, reaction's bad. But if you understand, reaction's just letting you know that there's something inside of you that you have to learn. Otherwise, you wouldn't go into reaction because otherwise you'd just be neutral. And as you hear on this pathway, we talk about neutrality, right? Well, avoiding our reactions or trying to shut off those reactions or push them away is not how we get neutral. Reactions letting you know where you're not neutral. So what you want to do is open up and start to now receive the loving. And this is why it's so good to do all these other things, because that's how you move yourself into the loving to be able to receive what I'm saying now is really within that reaction. And I'm not saying receive the reaction, I'm saying receive what's in that reaction, because your living, loving essence is in there and it's all clouded and caught up. So if you go into react in that reaction, if you try to push it away, you're just pushing away a part of yourself that's trying to return. But to do that, we've got to understand the process, like I was sharing today, how to do that, so that the loving now can begin to reveal to you what that lesson is for you. Okay? Any kind of reaction is letting us know where we've shut down and created separation. We want to open back up where those reactions are indicating we've shut down. But it's only done through loving. And so we've got to be able to take these things back in and receive that living, loving essence of who we are from that. But it's that process now by which it takes place. That's, again, what the talk was about today. So part of it, like Jim was saying, and I thought you were going to say, part of that is also asking it, what is it here to teach you?
Yeah.
Because there's the lesson in there. But that lesson's only going to be revealed by doing the loving first. You got to create the space, in other words, through loving first. Otherwise, you're just going to be in struggle and fighting with it. When we're in struggle and fighting, it's often because we're making reaction wrong or bad, or somebody's attacking us, which is all false. But in this world, my God, 100% justified reasons, logical, makes sense. And that's why people have a challenge really walking the pathway and getting liberated, because it takes a whole different approach, let alone it's almost 180-degree turnaround of how it actually works and why it's there and what it's there to teach us. Now, would you want to add more to it?
No, that's very well put.
So that's the process. But then to go any further with this sharing, then it's a matter of going into the details of that's what the confessions and counseling class is that I do, is that I take the time to go through these things with each individual to say, okay, so you're in reaction now. What was going on? What's going on inside of you? What was, in a sense, the context, not the storyline, but the context, because that often will begin to give us an idea of where the learning is. And then it's a matter of, through the questions and all, uncovering that through, again, a movement of loving to come into greater understanding and cooperation with what's going on inside of oneself, rather than fighting that and making it wrong and just trying to get rid of it. So receive instead of push away. Don't make reaction wrong, rather accept it, be with it, and open yourself and open up the reaction so that it reveals what it's there to teach you, let alone return to you that living, loving essence that you actually put into it in the first place. Does that work okay, Kelsey, for now with that one?
Yeah, excellent.
Okay.
Okay, so second question. I find that I am now quite sensitive to the energy around people and have chosen to stay away from many people. I don't want to become a hermit because I do enjoy being around people socially, but I don't like the feeling of chaos. With one family member, this is very prevalent. He does this to many people, and I have thought of approaching him about his behavior to help him understand this. I can feel that he is unhappy, and this is a manifestation of that which makes him feel sad for him. Sorry. I feel that he is unhappy, and this is a manifestation of that which makes me feel sad for him. Is there a better approach to dealing with these energies other than just choosing not to be around them, which then causes conflict with that individual because they don't understand why you are withdrawing and want to be around you and not want to be around you?
You want me to start or you want to?
Oh, go ahead.
So here's the thing ultimately, for any type of communication to work, it's got to come from the place of where you take responsibility and own your own thoughts and feelings and actions and reactions. So if you go to somebody else and try to tell them what they're doing, they're just going to react and get defensive because you're telling them. Because what's happening is that you're actually coming from a place of reaction and then putting your reaction on them, trying to control them to do it the way you want them to do it. That never will work. Go ahead and try though. We all do it. This is how I learned to do real communion in action or communication, as we'll start off by making it about the other person, but eventually we realize, oh my God, I've got to make it about myself. So what you want to do is, just like I talked about today and just how I answered the last question, is now begin to see, well, what is it inside of you that you're in disturbance or reaction with this other person? Once you can get that clarity and understanding inside of you, why that bothers you with what they're doing, you'll begin to realize it's your own thoughts and feelings around all of this that what you're really dealing with, not them. It's actually what's inside of you. Okay? So take the time to get that inner clarity. And then when you go and talk with somebody, you can come from that place and share with them what goes on for you. Say, look, the reason I've been avoiding you, or if it seems like I've been avoiding you, I've been taking the time to get in touch with my own thoughts and feelings, because with the certain behaviors, as you said, when that happens, I find myself going into reaction. And what I've come to discover is that my reactions was based on because of how I would get uncomfortable, how I would get disturbed, how I felt, however. I don't care if it's embarrassment, shame, guilt, anger, sadness. You got to own what it is going on inside of you and what you're learning through the process about yourself. When you can communicate and share with somebody your process, that's what'll make an effective communication. And that's when somebody in will that you're wanting to go to change their behavior. Well, you demonstrate the change in your behavior with them. They will learn through your example, and then you won't need to make it about them. When they see and get your example of what you're doing, they'll begin to see what they can do for themselves. That will turn into an effective communication. Anything other than that won't work. I did years and years of practicing communication like this. And it's the only way I found that actually 100% of the time provides true solution and peace and freedom from the disturbance. Anything other than that, it's just going to be a game of coming to that same, in a sense, conclusion or resolution that I came to. And that's really what we're all going to go through anyway. So, yes, it's worth doing it because if you keep avoiding all these things going on in your life, to me, that's also saying that you're avoiding your own lessons. Okay, I'm not saying you got to go participate with everything and everybody, no, but you need to look at why you're not participating if you are avoiding. Sometimes when we do the work and then we're more at peace and we do less with other people, that's not an avoidance. That's living in our peace. But if we're doing it because we don't want to be around others because all we do is get disturbed, well, then it's an avoidance because we're not dealing with our own disturbance. Okay? The outer can look the same, but what's going on in the inner is completely different. So it always comes back to the inner and what we're doing about that to come to a place of peace, not to use anything out here as a way of avoiding, because really we're not really avoiding out here. What we're really avoiding is what's going on inside of us. So we need again to take the time to start to, what is it? Know thyself. Come to know ourselves. That's what we're doing here in ILM. The meditation, the self-study, the service, all of that is everything we're doing. So that takes participation, not avoidance. Anything more you want to?
No, that's very clear.
Okay. Anything we missed, or does that sound good, Kels?
Sounds great.
Okay.
Communion in action.
Yeah. And as a plug for the retreat coming up, this is
Mhm.
a lot of what we're going to be looking at in the retreat.
Okay, hello everyone. Thank you for this wonderful class. During my meditation with Jim, my awareness was about how hard it is to think of myself first and connect with God lately while I'm surrounded by so many people around me all the time. And I'm rarely alone except at night or when I meditate my 2.5 hours daily. I can't change my outer circumstances too much in my life, but my meditation reminded me to focus on myself in my chaotic life by moving less, talking less, sharing less, my thoughts, and listening more to friends and family so I can bring the focus back on myself and connect with God in my daily life. Thank you for your support.
You're welcome.
That's great awareness. And I'm glad you got what you got because now you can begin to simplify your life and find that stillness inside even in the midst of a crowd.
Amen to that. And that's the beginning. Um, I know when we talk about change, a lot of people think, change the outer, and that's not what we're really geared towards. When we can change the inner, the outer will respond to that. And when I heard this person saying that they're listening more, well, that's a wonderful way to begin to change the inner. And by spending the time in meditation, that's going to change and transform the inner. So when we're willing to do the meditation and self-study, that'll create an inner transformation. And then out of that inner transformation comes the service. And it's through that transformation in ourselves that truly our behaviors will change, let alone just our own, if you want to call it frequency or essence, because it'll be what, more neutral. And that itself then will begin to create change around us. But then that change happens automatically as a response to what's going on inside of us. So if people really understand what we're sharing here, you realize you don't need to try to change the outer. You just change the inner through this inner work, and the outer is going to respond to that. And changes in your life will automatically happen, and those changes will always be for the better because it's a outer reflection of the inner really transformation that's taking place.
Next. So, question.
Yes.
Okay. Hey, Jim, Brian, and Kelsey. My question today is about liberation. Brian, when you did the talk on bowing down, I had the experience at one point of doing that within myself. And as I did it this time, I had the experience of a stone rolling away at the seat of the soul, the forehead, and heard roll away the stone, which reminded me like what happened with Jesus at the tomb at the forehead. After the stone rolled away, out rolled this shining white essence, like a pearl or marble, which then reminded me of the pearl of great price. Then, after a little while, this marble started to very slowly float upwards in a flow of gentle white light, and that was it for the moment. Since then, I've been having similar experiences of that as I bow in meditation or when I stop and do this throughout the day. It's not the same or always quite as clear, but I'll bow down and experience the stone rolling away. Out rolls the pearl, and up it goes as it starts to float away. Sometimes I am more aware that I am that pearl, but most of the time I've been seeing it from the angle of observing it rolling out and up. My question is this the beginning of liberation versus the action of gathering all the loving back to the seat of the soul? Like today, I saw it more of a clear white light pathway all the way down in me where it collects and comes up to the seat of the soul, and then it can be released out of the tomb. So is this more of a direct liberation action, or am I just beginning to see the path I've always been walking all along a little more clearly or directly? Much thanks to all of you in loving devotion to God and this wonderful pathway home.
You want me to start or you want to?
Oh, go ahead.
Well, you definitely got the symbology there because that really is the action. Whenever we meditate, that door opens. Okay, as soon as we do the sacred name and chanting, those are the keys that open the door, whether that's door or a window or a stone that moves out of the cave. That's correct, and that's the whole symbology of Jesus and, rising from the dead and out of the tomb. That's exactly it. And yes, the soul definitely can appear as like the luminescent pearl or a ball of light, like a miniature sun. And that's definitely what takes place. So that's definitely the action of soul liberation. And it can be several things because that can take place right even before initiation. Like if that happens when you're doing the hue, that's just the soul level, the physical now beginning the process of liberating from the physical. And then, of course, Then we get initiation, and then that soul level or each name on the soul level, the same thing takes place. There's another door on each level. Okay? So, however the soul looks, whether it's a light, whether it's a pearl, whether it's a type of a bird, or you even see yourself, there's stages of that awakening. And that's exactly what we're doing. The other part of it, when you said the pathway inside up to this point, there's the inner and the outer, as above, so below. So just like from here up into the soul realm, that's the path of the Holy Spirit that can appear as that purple light or as a white light, or it can appear in many different ways as a windy path or literally a straight path or a ray of light. But it's the reflection as well in here, the inner kingdom, that as we're walking up, when we go in and up to the seat of the soul, we've got to go in and up through each and every chakra. There's our inner kingdom work, and that's a lot of what all the LAF work is about. That is, we do the LAF work or the self-study and taking responsibility for our thoughts, feelings, actions, and reactions. That's now walking the inner kingdom path up here to be born again. So whether it's rising from the dead, which is symbolic of the soul awakening or being born again of spirit, that's exactly what's happening. So yes, this is the action of liberation, both the inner kingdom as well as the outer kingdom, the soul's journey beyond the body, and all that. So where you are on that path, well, in some ways it doesn't matter because you're liberating from every level, the physical, the astral, the causal, the mental, the etheric, and eventually, of course, into the soul realm itself. So, yes, to your question, as well as I know I gave more detail, just, for everybody to understand that in case there's anybody newer here, that they understand the symbology with all that. And that is what you are doing and have been doing, and everybody here on this journey. So for you, and that's just great because we want everybody to really know through their own experience. And that's the key in this, is to have your own experience. And so it's wonderful you're having your experience with this journey of soul liberation.
I think that's well put. It really is about liberation, and there are many different levels to it, but really it's all one. And just kind of move with it. Sometimes we don't have to have distinct, clear understanding of every step, but go with the flow and the action inwardly, and you'll understand more and more as it unfolds.
Okay. My goodness, I had this journaled up yesterday wondering if I should send it or not, but after Jim and Brian's sharings, I'm sharing. When someone is using the names and or vulnerabilities of other people to try and control the actions you take, to make you look only at them instead of anybody else, including Jim, Brian, and Kelsey, what do we do with that? And where do we draw the line? It feels like they're trying to use the names of Jim, Brian, and Kelsey to beat me down because I won't bow down to them. I have been struggling tremendously with this question because I fully understand that only God can see behind the closed door of the relationship that I am in with this person, and no one else is seeing any of it. And quite frankly, I don't think anyone would believe an effing thing, even if I did speak out loud about it. But God has seen it, and I know that people are not seeing what I'm seeing. But I don't doubt that I am not the only person that has experienced this or is experiencing it. And I don't mean by the same person as me, I just mean the experience itself. I really don't give a fluffy cloud what people say about me or do to me, because truly I've done worse to myself within myself, and learned the hard way what not to do. But when other people's vulnerabilities are being smeared, I can't choose into that energy and pacify that kind of behavior. But I don't know what to do when they do that. And even though I have spoken my truth to them, and that truth is God first for me, and my focus is spirit and not people, I give it up to God. But I am technically not worse when I see or hear it and do nothing. I choose into this person the good, the bad, and the indifference, but they only ever want to be seen as a victim of everybody else's actions that they create and try to control. This is a whole other level of head fuckery that feels like Goliath's storm. I've been doing most of this year with God and God alone, and it really is peaceful and simple. But this experience is not my first with this karma, and the last time I didn't speak up about what someone was doing to me because I didn't think anyone would believe me. I went to prison. And now I'm wondering, is this why my body has no salt and why I'm losing my teeth? Because I'm not speaking up about the rights. I have no interest in trying to save anyone or intervene in anyone else's karma. But where do I draw the line for me? Because anytime I try to step into anything or build a relationship with anybody on our sacred pathway, this person constantly interjects themselves between the other person and me, and I just don't know what to do with that anymore. They want me to just stay hidden and quiet, so they start hurling other people's vulnerabilities at me to try to get me to see them differently, and that's not my business. People are showing this person a lot of trust, and they are just abusing that trust. I think maybe re-listening to today's talks 100 times is what I need to do, but any insight would be greatly appreciated. Your loving initiate.
Can you read that first part again? I'm not totally clear what they mean by people's vulnerabilities like that.
When someone is using the names and then a slash, like a, slash that's like and or, and vulnerabilities of other people to try to control the actions you take to make you look only at them instead of anybody else, including Jim, Brian, and Kelsey. What do you do with that? And where do you draw the line? It feels like they're trying to use the names of Jim, Brian, and Kelsey to beat me down because I won't bow down to them.
Okay, that makes more sense. Yeah,
Okay.
so I mean, obviously that's a classic control manipulation where when somebody really is trying to control somebody else, they're going to play all kinds of games, and that's a really good one. Um, sometimes when there may be people in our lives, let me put it this way, I always try to give opportunity or possibility by having honest conversations with people, depending on my level of closeness with them or not. Like a complete stranger, I'm not going to enter into, maybe an open, honest, vulnerable communication. Whereas if it's somebody who's part of my life, then I'm going to take the time and make the attempt to have those open, honest, vulnerable communications. And in that, as you heard me describe earlier, by owning my own process and sharing that with the other person, so I'm not blaming them or putting it on them, that's what I'll do to give the opportunity to not only try to make the communication or relationship out here better, but ultimately any communication I do is to support my own inner freedom. So if you can take that as the basis, any relationship out here is giving us the opportunity to step more into our own loving and freedom. It's just a matter as if we take that opportunity. And that's why I'm saying I always make the attempt. I always give it the chance by me taking actions in this relationship. Because I found when I do that, it opens me up so that then whatever lessons are hidden through this process and in any of my reactions with this process, that I do what I can internally to have those come forward to be revealed. And as long as I do that, things are always good. And I'll find sometimes people will work with me, commune with me in that way, communicate, and other times people won't. The people that truly have no interest into growth, awakening, or loving relationships, they're going to keep doing everything they can to keep squashing anything to do with that. They'll use anger, they'll use fear, they'll do whatever they can to manipulate and control the relationship. And if that's one of those types of relationships that you have given opportunity by you utilizing this in front of you as an opportunity for you to share your truth, and I don't mean share your truth as in now you're having an argument about what so and so said. Well, Jim, Brian, or Kelsey said this. Well, if it's that kind of argument, that's going to go nowhere. Doesn't do anybody any good. So that's not standing up or speaking your truth. Okay. Speaking your truth is really awakening more to what's really going on inside of you and owning that and sharing that process, not making it about others, not about me, Jim, or Kelsey, or anybody, or even about the other person who may be doing this with you. That you take the opportunity, like I've been answering every question today so far, as well as what my talk was about, is to do that work. Because that's what the outer reflection is giving us the opportunity, is to stir awake within us all those things that are both already in a loving place and all those things that are not, or causing the separation from the loving. And so every relationship is giving us the opportunity to either keep uncovering that living, loving essence that is within us, or the pearl of great price. That's the journey here, like the dragon seeking after the pearl of great price. That's what we're doing here. And in some places, there's just not that opportunity. And if this is one of those relationships, then it's up to you. Why are you staying in it? Because if you're making those attempts and really getting in more touch with the loving inside of you, that's what it's meant to be there for you, to bring clarity to what that is. What do you sacrifice or suppress within yourself to be in this relationship? And anytime you try to really share more in that vulnerability of whatever that loving truth is inside of you, and if all it does is keep getting squashed and manipulated out here, that's time to me to take a look at moving on. That's what I would do. Literally, I would move on. But again, I hope you hear I always try to give opportunity, possibility. I make the attempts for myself, recognizing and realizing that every relationship is there for a reason to help us discover and learn more about ourselves. But at some point, if it's a dead end, then, and we've done that work, inner and outer, to try to get that value, to come to that point, if all we do is keep hitting the wall, then maybe it's time to really make a different choice. And if that means you're done with that relationship, you're done with it. Move on. There's nothing wrong with letting go and moving on. That's sometimes the choices we need to make in this world, even if it's family or if it's a best friend, whatever it is. I know those are the harder ones to do that with, but if that's what it's required for your own well-being and continued movement forward, then that's what's there for you to do. Ultimately, we can live this pathway totally internally and silent to the world, okay? Because it's all an internal path through meditation and the inner work we're doing. But in this day and age, we have the opportunity, to really now work it to another level. you're really understanding and practicing not only the meditation, but the self-study aspect. And the first step of service is doing the opportunities here for yourself. And that's why I always try to share about communication as an opportunity for communion and action, but we have to always approach it in a way that it serves and works for us. As soon as we get caught up in the argument and the battle out here, it's never going to work for anybody. So if that's what you're doing, you're just feeding what's already there. And then if you end a relationship from that place, it's only going to be a temporary freedom. And then some other relationship will show up that'll be very similar because you didn't do or learn what you needed to with the one that's present. Okay? I'm trying to cover all the bases of this because I've seen people hop out of relationships too quickly and easily because they don't want to do the work. And I've seen other people do the opposite, where it was time to leave a long time ago, and they're just determined to somehow change the other person so that this will work. Did you notice how I said that? They're determined to change the other person. Well, it's never going to work that way. The only thing that'll work is for you to change yourself. And then in that type of change or transformation, then it'll be clear and a lot easier to either move on, or if the other person kept working with you, they're changing too, and then you can keep growing together. But that's where you're going to have to look and learn in that process to make that choice that's going to best serve you. So when I say I would move on, I'm just saying that from the perspectives I'm sharing right now and what I've lived and experienced, and from what it sounded like you're going through there. Anything more?
No, I think you're really getting it right on top.
Okay. It's funny because a lot of the questions today not only really is what I was addressing in the talk, but this is actually a lot of what we're going to be addressing in the retreat coming up. So I find that actually pretty interesting.
Yeah,
It's like, okay, the retreat's begun, a month and a half out.
And we will be recording it, so if you can't make it, don't worry. We'll post it online.
There you go.
that'll be great.
You ready for the next one?
Sure.
Observing in meditation. Hello, beautiful teachers. I have had restless leg for most of my life. When I started meditating, I had tried everything to get rid of it. The saying, be still and know that I am, was challenging because being still meant I couldn't have my legs twitching, or so I thought. So recently, I have been loving my restless legs and embracing it, redefining what quote unquote be still was. Today I said today I said simple, like you talked about, Brian, in the one of the sharings before my meditation. I went to that place within of peace, the seat of the soul, and just observed and noticed something different this time. My legs were twitching, yet there was no disturbance with it. I was observing, but it was like I was above it. This continued throughout the meditation. So, I would love to hear your thoughts on what, quote, be still, unquote, means. I thought the body had to be still, but I think I was misunderstanding it from my experience today. Loving gratitude.
Well, be still is really about the inner self, and be still inside. The body will come into alignment as best it can, but it's for you to hold the focus inward and upward and be still in the seat of the soul. And that means then the mind and all of that is not going to be able to approach it and distract you because you're in the stillness, you're in the quiet where God resides inside of you. If you can still the body and still the emotions and still the mind, that's great. but sometimes that takes more effort to get that to happen. It's easier, I think what you found today was by going inside and being still inside, it was easier just to let whatever was going on in the outer, but still you could be in that quiet place.
Totally, man. Literally, the peace be still is just up here at the seat of the soul. And sure, it can help to still the body because then it's not as much of a distraction. It can help to try to still the mind because it's not as much of a distraction. It can help to still the emotions. But then we start entering into a process of control. Control never works because control is always a form of suppression that is going to eventually backfire. Because anytime we try to make anything happen or control anything, the energy gets backed up, and at some point the pressure builds and explodes, right? Or it leaks out in a way that causes even more disturbance and problems. So at some point, well, first of all, I want to say good for you for realizing, oh my God, this is about spirit, not about my mind, emotions, and body. Because then when we just come up here and focus truly where the only stillness exists, that as we do that automatically, and don't worry about the other, even if it is distracting, over time, as you just keep focusing at the seat of the soul and focusing into the purple light or the Holy Spirit or the light of your own soul, you'll become more aware of the stillness that's within the spirit. And then the more you focus and focus and focus, you move more and more into that stillness. So that becomes more your experience, and that's also letting you know you're living more of the spirit. And then how that reflects through the mind, the emotions, and the body, you'll find that it'll bring some level of calm, but it's never going to stop it. That only stops when you die, okay? We don't want to stop it. We just want spirit to now be our focus. God first, God only, and then let God now do what God's going to do with all that other. And a lot of it is just loving it, accepting it the way it is. And when we love and accept it the way it is and don't try to control it, it will then work through whatever it needs to work through to come to a place of freedom. And that's what the Holy Spirit's going to do with us when we allow it and just accept and receive the loving unconditionally. That the loving then will begin to transform and change things over time. And some things just may not change till we literally leave, last breath. And other things, they will transform a lot before that last breath. But if you don't make that your concern, then it's not going to be a concern. Just make that action of loving with God the concern, and then let the rest just unfold however it's going to unfold. And it's amazing how it really works. It's just that a rare soul understands it until literally God's calling them home. Those are the only ones who are going to understand. Everybody else is trying to control the mind and the body and everything. And look at all the things out there in the world. You know, like this Wim Hof stuff and everything else I see. Good stuff. Ain't going to work for the soul. Doesn't do anything. And ultimately, what you're going to do, you're going to die and reincarnate and say, well, if that was an experience, and what do you learn anyway? Well, yeah, maybe it produces some good healthy effects. But then all that control is doing all kinds of other things in our consciousness we have no idea about, and that we're going to be now learning for several lifetimes after the fact. Which is all part of the journey anyway. So I'm not making anything wrong or bad. I'm just trying to say how it is. And those of us on the path to sun and light that are looking to get free and liberated, you realize the process is very different than a lot of other yogas and techniques and things that are out there, because we're not trying to create a better health of the mind, emotions, and body, we're trying to liberate the soul. The nice thing in doing that, it'll help bring more calm and may create better health of the mind, emotions, and body. Well, it does definitely do that to some degree, at least in the mind, but also sometimes it's going to bring up other karmas that may look more disturbing. So some people think, well, my God, I've gotten more unhealthy doing this pathway. But if you realize, well, if that unhealth or disease states are these karmas that are coming up because they've got to be worked off, that changes everything. See, most people would try to control the health of the body and really judge and make wrong if the body's unhealthy. We don't do that here because we understand that sometimes the body's going to be unhealthy and go through these healing processes to work off the karma. So what does that mean? That means by allowing the freedom to go through these things that would appear unhealthy, that the soul is going to get liberated from the karmas that are creating that state of unhealthiness. Whereas if we're trying to always control it, well, all we're doing is suppressing. Okay. And I know what I'm saying now can cause a little bit of confusion or question as well. And, you know, that's part of our learning. I don't want to apologize for it because it's a process I had to go through, and each one of us will. And it's a challenge, I know, but it does take a really different perspective to really live this path of liberation because it's very different than everything else the world's trying to do. Everything. Everybody else is into anti-aging, longevity, perfect health. And it's like, believe me, I was on that path for many years. Okay. I would prefer to be on that path if it really worked with what we're doing. But I found the more I surrender to God, the less than that, one, I need to try to control things, and the less I care to control things, because over the years I've seen anytime you try to do any kind of control, what happens. So I've learned to just surrender and leave it in God's hands and do what I can to find, let's just call it a relative balance with the physical state of health or well-being, if we want to call it that. Knowing that some of the stuff is just karma's getting worked off. Okay? So that's why we say God first, God only, because if you make it about God, then it's okay, whatever the body goes through, or the mind or the emotions. We don't make any of it wrong. We don't try to control any of it. But yes, we are always trying to move towards loving and accepting and forgiving, including the health of the body, including the health of our mind and emotions. I'm not saying that doesn't matter. I'm just saying we're making God first and not trying to control all the other. We're trying to take responsibility for our thoughts, feelings, actions, and reactions. Take responsibility, not make it perfect. Just take responsibility for it. Take actions that are healthy and supportive, but not let the result of whether we're diseased or healthy be the determinant of whether you're doing it right or wrong, good or bad, or any of that. That's what I'm trying to address here. I hope that's clear. I'm trying to communicate that, and hopefully you guys are getting it. If not, it's okay. It's part of our learning journey. We will hear and interpret things the way we're going to for our own learning. And that's what I learned over all these years listening, you know, when spiritual teachings were always being shared, because often we'll interpret it in a different way than maybe what was meant to be. But I also learned that's fine because that's where our lessons are at the time in doing so. So in other words, it's all good. As imperfect it is, it's perfect. Anything more?
No, that was good.
Okay.
Dear Jim, Brian, and Kelsey, thank you as always for a powerful class filled with such wisdom, and Brian's closing prayer was so powerful. I am writing on behalf of a dear friend who was
That was for
recently,
closing prayer, just so you're not confused.
What?
But yes, my closing prayer through Jim was really nice. Oh, unless it was the
Well,
prayer
you
we did in the
you did.
beginning of the meditation.
Yeah, I think she means
Okay,
your meditation you closed with a prayer.
got it. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm writing on behalf of a dear friend who was recently initiated. A few hours before today's class, her husband had a heart attack and is currently in hospital as they assess the blockages, etc. Jim's closing comments reminding us that everything is in God's hands and that he knows what he is doing felt so pertinent for her at this time. It just felt right to send this note in so that when she listens to the recording from today's class, there will perhaps be some extra nuggets of wisdom specifically for her situation as she rides through any fears and the intensity of what she is journeying through at the moment. Endless thanks for you all and for the extraordinary blessing it is to be able to tune in each month with you, and even better, to be with you in the flesh in 6 weeks' time. Wow.
Wow is right. I'm looking forward to it.
So, do you have any words for this
Hmm.
new initiate? Yeah, and what she's going
Guess
through?
I'll go first.
Yeah, go
Okay.
ahead.
Um, so what she said about through the fears, I forget what the other word was, but her fears, concerns, and all that. That is, again, that is the key. Because it's funny because a lot of times when we share about this pathway, it can sound very selfish because we keep bringing it back to self, right? The difference is we're bringing it back to the soul self, not the ego self that's self-centered, okay? When we bring it back to the soul self, it's always now a movement of loving. But there's this process we need to move through to get to the soul self. And that is through the fears, the judgments, the concerns, in other words, all of our attachments and entanglements in the world. So yes, when somebody has something major, life-threatening like that, it's going to stir all these things in us, right? Just like I said today about the holidays stirring things. Well, of course, especially life and death, like a heart attack, is going to stir these in us. And that's a good thing because then it brings these up in our consciousness so that we can begin to look and handle these or just suppress them for another time. And that's sometimes a choice people make. Now, in considerations, if I know a lot of people like to pray for others or send light to others. Now, one of the ways that I found to make that even more powerful, especially if it's like a spouse, a family member, as you've heard in here, when you get initiated, that grace of the initiation is extended to family members. So that's one of the things that's part of that beauty or perfection of how the grace works is that that is going to your husband here, even with him and his heart attack. And I'm glad I shared what I shared before about the health of the body, mind, emotions, because this is a good example. The movement of spirit has nothing to do with the health of the body. Okay, it's about the spirit. But in this process, if we want to really support that action and movement of loving and grace to family members and others, the more we can do inside of ourselves, again, to move through the fears and open them up, then the more loving and grace can move through to serve others. So if we're praying for somebody, but we're praying out of a place of fear, that loving that comes through is going to be very constricted by the amount of fear we have. Okay? Any prayer is going to be a movement of loving towards somebody or something. Well, I shouldn't say any prayer because I mean a prayer of loving. Okay, not a negative, evil prayer because I guess there are those out there too. So yeah, not anyone. One that's based obviously on caring and loving. So the more we can move through and open up and move beyond our own fears, well, then there's a bigger space inside of us so that as we do pray or send the light to other people, that a bigger movement of that loving can go to other people because of that work we're doing. Okay, that's what I'm getting at. And again, that's why I'm saying this could sound self-centered instead of like, oh my God, you're focused on yourself instead of the other person right now. Well, yes and no. If you hear what I'm saying, the more you can let go of your own fear, which is obviously the self-focus, the more loving you'll be able to share and have for others. So, in other words, everybody benefits. Instead of living in fear and sending your fear to the other person, because believe it or not, that's what a lot of people do, even when they're praying for somebody's greater health and good, they're often putting a lot of their fear on the other person as well, not realizing that. That's why I'm saying if we can take a little bit of self-focus and open up our fears and help ourselves move beyond them, well, then when we pray and send the light and loving to others, they're really getting the light and loving then, not our fear. Okay? I don't know if I need to say anything more now after saying that. That's what I've come to discover. I've actually found out a lot of times I don't even need to pray or ask for the light because when I keep doing all the inner work, I just stay as an open vessel. And I have found spirit moving through me automatically. And all of a sudden I'll be aware of like, loving going to somebody that I wasn't even thinking about. But all of a sudden I felt this movement of loving. I looked at the loving and then I had the awareness of where that movement of loving was going. I'm like, whoa. Okay, we got this thing on autopilot. And that's really what we want to do, right? Because if we meditate regularly and do the inner work regularly, you're going to be in a constant state of openness and in the flow with the Holy Spirit, with your own soul's loving. That's autopilot. But you got to understand autopilot takes daily maintenance. So that's what I'm sharing here. So just know that in saying all that, this is support you and your husband. And of course, as soon as somebody shares with us, kind of automatically, that's what we do is just open up and let that light of the Holy Spirit go to wherever that is that the person's attention has been focused.
And it's nice. I mean, her being initiated just allows that grace to flow easier for him as well. So that's good.
There you go.
Yeah.
So God bless with it all. And thank you for sharing, because I definitely felt a movement of loving go as soon as Kelsey shared it with us. And thank you for giving the opportunity to share all this just for everybody, to consider whenever anything in life. Anything more with that, Kels?
No, it
So
was
we
beautiful.
can all work towards autopilot here.
With maintenance,
That's right.
daily maintenance. Okay, so dream interpretation. Dearest Jim, Brian, and Kelsey, thank you for your continued loving and service. Wishing you happy, healthy, and joy-filled holidays and New Year. I had this dream recently and would appreciate hearing your thoughts and interpretation. Dream. I was wrestling with someone, and at one point, he put me into a hold from behind. He was a little strong, so I said, I surrender. As he slowly let go, I slowly woke up and realized how real his arm felt, and the hold seemed to be more of a loving hug. It scared me because it felt so real and sent a chill throughout my body, which lasted for a while until I just told myself it was my surrendering and receiving a divine hug. Is this an accurate interpretation? Or should I be afraid? Laugh out loud, just joking.
That's a very good interpretation. You want to say anything else?
Sure, I can. I'm just
Go
seeing
ahead.
if you had some
No,
more to say.
no, that's a good interpretation, though.
So surrendering is always a good action no matter what. No question. And that's what allows the loving, so you get embraced by the loving. So when I hear somebody fighting or wrestling or struggling of any sort, to me, it says that there's something inside of you that you have been struggling or fighting with. And whoever this other person was in the experience symbolizes whatever that is you've been struggling with. Okay? So the fact that they got you in a hold, to me, saying that you at the moment felt stuck because of how whatever this is that you've been struggling with got its grip on you. But now you're learning the secret to freedom. It's always about surrender. So as soon as you surrendered, no longer fighting, in other words, you're no longer reacting with, and now you're surrendering to. Well, see, that's how it works. Our reactions and things we struggle with, they're only matching what we're putting out in reaction. So as soon as we surrender and let go of our resistance, our struggle, our judgments, our fears, automatically these things have to respond by letting go. Because in truth, it's only us as creators that are creating these things. So if you realize that, then you realize the power is all in ourselves. So whatever we do is what determines the result of any external reflections. And I mean in external, because this was external to you, even though it was inside, it was still external to you, the soul. Okay? So that surrender now, well, what happened? Well, you decided to let go of whatever it was in your beliefs and your thoughts and your feelings. And in the letting go, what happens? It allows the soul. Let go and let the soul. There's the loving. So as soon as you let go, then the loving's present, and now that which was you were struggling with is holding you in place, keeping you stuck, in other words. Now the loving's coming in out of your choice to now let go so you can move into your freedom. So yes, there is that hug of loving, but it's based on because now you surrendered and let the loving come in, so it transforms whatever your struggle was now into loving. All right? And it's as easy as this. This is a great example. I love this, how easy this actually is. All we have to do is surrender. No matter what we're in reaction with, no matter what we're struggling with, no matter who it is, no matter what it looks like. Storyline doesn't matter. Just surrender. That's all we have to do. I love it because you just gave a great example. And again, it doesn't matter who that person was or what they symbolized in your consciousness. What matters is you surrendered, and that's the answer how to handle anything like that. And then it automatically transforms it. Instead of a hold, it's now a hug. Great transformation. Good job. Thank you.
Dream. I had a dream last night that I was with my former spouse, and I think my daughter, and we were with another family, and we were getting ready to go out to a movie. I left to go shopping, and at one point was showing some items that I had, and she told me she wanted me to show them to a person who might know their value. I had a group of different stones and crystals, and this person told me they were valuable because they were from a pyramid. The other objects were two wooden figures made into necklaces. At first, he said they were valuable and would like to have them, and finally told me they were worth $500,000 each. And then I found myself back with the others, and I was excited to tell my husband because this would help us. And I told him I had found them at different sales that I went to and didn't know they were valuable. I was hungry as well and wanted to stop somewhere to eat before going to the movie. A woman in the home said she might have something for me to eat. They all left early for the movie, and I was left in the home, and the dream ended.
Go ahead.
You're hearing me do them all today almost.
Uh-huh. Why not? You're doing well.
So gems, kind of like the other one, however they appear, no matter what kind of gems or crystals, they're all, just call them jewels, gems. You know, you've heard the phrase, don't throw pearl before swine, or uh, gems of wisdom. So they do represent wisdom and other aspects of God or loving. So those are always valuable. They're the most valuable thing. That's why even the pearl of great price is saying great price. It's beyond price. Okay, that's really talking about the value of spirit. So to me, these jewels, in other words, you pick these things up, right? Well, that's saying you picked up these wisdoms from people, experiences along the way that now become a part of you. In other words, that ownership of like these are your jewels or gems and crystals and all. And the pyramid, I mean, that's even symbolic right there because it's often people associate that often with the some type of spiritual action, especially the capstone. And then, of course, the four corners of the base, which to me is really about the world, east, west, south, north. Capstone here, we talk about climbing the inner mountain, right? Well, the pyramid is another way of looking at the inner mountain. And so the jewels and all are telling me about the wisdom you've gained through climbing that inner mountain or pyramid, and the value of money put on that is inherent with, wow, you value that. That's like worth a lot, right? So that's sharing with you the value spiritually that you have gained over what you've done on your spiritual journey. Your turn to add to it.
No, that's beautiful. It really is about the inner, not the outer. And it's showing her all the valuable things that she's collected within herself, her wisdom, her truth. That's good.
Yeah. So, if anything, it's also saying if I want to relay it with any of the other parts of the dream, like what you've been through with the previous husband, and is saying through, yes, those are hardships, but the wisdom you gain through life challenges and hardships is what's so valuable. And even your daughter in there can also represent a part of your consciousness, all right? And in this other house, these are all, the house can represent our consciousness. The daughter can represent a part of you, like in more that childlike level. So if you start to see all these associations, and to me, you wanting to share the value you've gained with the present husband and daughter, well, that's letting you know. It's like when we want to share that with others and our joy, that's sharing our loving and the wisdom that has come with the loving from everything we've gone through, which is obviously a wonderful action. That literally, that one experience to me has all the elements of what we're teaching here from meditation to self-study and service, because you're transforming those old reactions and painful situations into wisdom now. And then that wisdom you're sharing with others, and there's the service. And now, in sharing your loving and wisdom, well, what goes wrong comes around, right? The more you give, the more you receive. It just keeps building now. So instead of sharing misery and suffering, you're sharing your wisdom and loving, and it's transforming you to come to that capstone and towards your liberation. Okay? Is that enough, or is there any other parts in there, Kelsey, you think would be good to cover?
Um, the crystals, the stones, the wooden figures.
Yeah, the wooden figures even are other symbols of that value that's been gained, just like the other crystals and stones.
Yeah, I think you covered it. I mean, she felt hungry and was left in the home to eat, but that's kind of how it ended.
Yeah, to me, that's so instead of going to the movie, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. They all
Yes.
left for the movie, but she was left in the home.
Yeah, so that to me is saying that by being in the home, she's going to partake of spirit, the manna from heaven, the food, to fill her consciousness with more loving rather than going outside to a movie.
Right.
Okay? So to me, that's also showing that this person, it's more important for them to feed, in their consciousness, that house, rather than going out of it to a movie. So it's like there's the priority. That's why it's good to meditate every day, because we get hungry. We want to eat every day.
Yeah, and I think the other part is when she went back to her husband and told him that she had found these at different sales
Hmm.
and that didn't know that they were valuable.
That's right.
That's a good one.
It's a good one. That's why I was saying that earlier about the wisdom.
Yeah.
Um, it these are the spiritual wisdoms are truly the most valuable thing, but we don't realize it until all of a sudden we do. A lot of a lot of times we'll walk this pathway, and in the beginning maybe we get excited and have some awesome experiences, or but after a while it's just often we'll take things for granted and we won't see the value in it anymore. And so yet here we are, if we're walking our life journey from the spiritual focus as in walking the pathway spiritually, we're still gaining the value, the wisdom that life has to offer us because of that spiritual approach, whether we make it valuable or not. It is valuable to the soul. It's just that sometimes we won't realize that until something happens or we wake up and realize, oh my God, this is amazing how important this is. This is the most valuable thing in the world because it's the only thing I take with me when I die. So it doesn't matter what wealth in the world I have this wealth of spirit now. And it's just a matter of when we wake up and realize that. And we each will at one point or another, or we may at one point, and then we may forget about it for a while, and then something happens in life, and all of a sudden it comes up again, and we go, "Oh my God, the value here just it just comes when it does." So I would say whatever's been going on in this person's life, more than likely something in their life situation brought forward in their consciousness the value of the wisdom they've gained over the time of doing all of this. Does that help?
Yeah, it just feels a greater depth. I like that.
Awesome. That's why I like asking you, because I kind of ask you questions and take what you have to share, as, if anything, as a proxy for the other person and what they're sharing in their letter.
Yeah, that was everything.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Well, everybody took it seriously then to write in before 5:30. You guys got
You really did.
eight more minutes until 5:30, so there's still time to write something in if you want. Kelsey and Tanya won't like me saying that.
What? Oh my goodness. You're funny.
Yeah.
You're a
Oh,
funny
thank
dude.
you. Wow, she actually said I was funny.
Stop.
Yeah, we have a few more minutes. If anybody wants to write in, yep, I'm giving it another time, a little bit of time. I'm stretch. This is the joke, so you guys know. Because Tanya and Kelsey are so patient with me, especially like during the confessions and counselings when we've gone really late at times in the past, that stretches everybody. And believe me, it takes a lot of endurance to go how many hours we do doing all this stuff. And it's a joke now because at the end I always ask, any more, any more? We're here if anybody wants. And then Kelsey and Tanya know, it's like, oh my God, he could be opening up for another hour or two of conversation.
Not just Kelsey and Tanya. Does everybody see Jim's laughter right now?
Uh-huh.
All three of us.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's
We're
true.
like, oh my goodness.
So there's the joke. I love just being in the flow, obviously. So,
Let me go back and look.
okay.
Yes.
Of course.
It says ho ho ho.
Oh, it's Santa Claus.
It's Santa Claus. Thanks for that. Somebody's got a sense of humor. Like us.
Well, what is it?
That's it. Silly.
Oh, that was it?
Ho ho ho.
Oh, I was thinking something else was coming.
I know, I was waiting for the sharing a question here.
Oh, ho, ho, ha, ha, ha.